I'm not sure exactly at what stage the phrase was given, but I know that I had gotten completely obsessed by this one fragment that we'd found about a very young girl that had been sold into slavery by her mother in India at the fort of Patman in India. And she'd been sold into slavery by her mother very young, had then been sold again to I think a captain on one of the ships coming to the Cape, and during that journey I think was sold 2 or 3 times, and then she'd arrived and we found that she had been recorded in one of the inventories of a pastor in Cape Town. Apparently he actually treated his slaves quite well. So there was just these kind of like fragments, and then I found on the internet a kind of aerial view of the fort of Patman and a close-up photograph, which in the end looked quite similar to the set, the wall of the set that we finally made in Cargo. But at that stage I didn't know that. But there was the sense of this haunting feeling of this relationship of the mother and the daughter that had been shattered by that one particular moment, a moment of need and desperation. And I suppose that was kind of in the back of my head, and Mark gave us the phrase. And funny, when I was sitting, couldn't quite find it. Then I had been, I think, recently walking along Milnerton Beach, not Milnerton, but Greenpoint. And there are lots of quite big pieces of shell and rock, and the sand is not ground down. There's a sense that what is there hasn't been worn away by time. It's been less worn away. So I think also the sense that during this whole process of making this piece, we were coming across these bits of information about this girl, China, who was sold by her mother there in India, and then another piece over there, and we could put them together, and then they kind of met a little bit, but somehow we were all feeling frustrated because we couldn't really find, the whole story, the whole voice, what was the real narrative of this, the story of slavery in the Western Cape. So it was the sense of kind of that the story had been fragmented, but not only had the story been fragmented, but that relationships had been absolutely shattered irreparably. And I suppose, improvisation is a very strange thing, and I think that if things are in place in terms of little pieces of information and an emotional relationship to the territory that you're working with, and then you somehow can set a task that allows all those fragments to come together, something happens. So I literally just said, I've got this idea, and I said, I just started talking, and I said to Vanessa, try and work with the image while I'm working, of the image of the little girl on the boat, on this journey. So she worked with kind of, I think, physical images of rocking. There was a little bit of text that we sort of tried to find about tried to imagine into what this young girl might have felt like, or what the sort of thoughts that she might have had in a storm, or in the long. People were dying as well. We brought bits of information in the sense that there were a lot of people who died on these journeys and were, thrown overboard in a very unceremonious burial, and a kind of absent burial, because there's no marking, there's no remembering. So, and so Vanessa was working with those kind of images, and I just started improvising around walking along the beach and trying to, and discovering a fragment of something, of a piece of porcelain from a long time ago. And I think I also remember my mother used to collect these, not collect, but she had, I think so many families have these porcelain pieces from Indonesia or wherever that were bought from the Netherlands, of blue painting on it. And anyway, so I've had that very much in my head. And then the sense of being able to find, of wanting, desiring to find the whole story, the whole piece, the whole pot, but finding one other fragment that doesn't quite fit. And it felt like it was, I mean, I wasn't aware of it at the time, because what I was feeling at that moment was this desire to try and find the story, try and find the narrative of the people who had experienced slavery and who had witnessed it in some kind of way. And also to find, I think it was also about this notion of just this very powerful image of the mother and the daughter that would never ever find their way back into some whole relationship. And in the end, it became an image for the relationships that were completely destroyed as a consequence of slavery. But yeah, I think also I think the tone for me felt that it came from a place that was really about seeking, about not knowing, and being in quite a fragile but quite direct relationship with the audience. I mean, I remember working with them with the notion of fragility and falling and catching, and the rarity and preciousness of the body. I mean, again, as a performer, I ended up working with them in only a rhythmic sense, and in a kind of emotive rhythmic sense. Yeah, and then Neo coming in very strongly with his porcelain pots, which became a kind of oral resonance to what was lost, because they were whole. Pots that Neo plays are completely whole.